Flying First Five, a reveal of the top fantasy players from the 2023 season continues. And this week we are talking fly-halves. From kicking to team situation, there's a common theme when it comes to the best first 5/8s from around the league. And talking about team situation, there was a whole lot of movement at the fly-half position, plus other roster moves from the past week, which we break down in the latest from around the league. The Fantasy Ruckers Show starts right now.
Where rugby and the world of fantasy sports collide. Welcome to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, talking all things rugby from the MLR to leagues around the world. We're on top of it. Headphones on, pads off. This is the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, and Devin Vanderpool.
What's up, everybody? This is episode number 80 of the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Thank you so much to our Fantasy Ruckers League members, our community members, and everyone else tagging along on this journey of trying to make fantasy rugby a reality in the MLR. With you, as always, Matt Yee, Devin Vanderpool, and myself, Ryan Yee, on a what is a fun time here in the world of rugby. Obviously got World Cup going on right now. Really doesn't get much better than this right now. Some pretty stellar play over the weekend, but that doesn't mean that it's quiet here on Major League Rugby fronts either. A whole bunch of roster moves going on as Rugby World Cup is in full swing. So we're gonna talk all about that. But guys, hey, it's a fun time. Might be the off season for Major League Rugby, but hey, we got a little bit of overseas action going on to keep us preoccupied.
Yep, I was counting down the days till the Friday first World Cup match got an absolute screamer between New Zealand and France.
Yep.
And we just backed it up with another great weekend or the first great weekend of World Cup rugby. Got to see some MLR guys representing their country, which is always good to see. And along with that, it seems like just as we thought things were getting quiet in the MLR, signings galore, I guess. Signings of pretty big players and trades of pretty big players that we're going to go through.
Yeah.
The off-seasons are bangers for the MLR, man.
Yeah, no kidding. Whole bunch of stuff going on. I got to say, from the World Cup for me, just heartbreak in that Wales-Fiji match. I mean, going down to the wire, just dropping that ball at the end made it a tough one, man. I was really pulling for Fiji there, despite the Wales quarter zip that I was wearing last episode. But hey, for you, Vandy, though, I guess for all of us, fantasy is in full swing. We obviously had a little bit of a break there. Obviously, could take a little break from the Major League Rugby fantasy worlds, but fantasy football is in full swing, and the stress is right back there, eh, buddy?
That's right.
Just the fantasy stress. We missed it. Obviously, Major League Rugby fantasy giving us a dose of that during the NFL offseason. But hey, the NFL is right back to kind of replace that angst that we've been missing so much for the past couple months.
Yeah, no rest for fantasy players, baby.
Yeah, exactly. We need something to fill the time between the MLR offseason,
That's right.
We got to have something there because we're just counting down the days at this point until the fantasy MLR season is back and in full swing.
It's actually super nice that they segue right into each other,
It's perfect.
You know what?
There's
There's something beautiful about it, boys.
And for you, Vandy, there's some translatable skills here. You know what I mean? You keep those fantasy skills going.
Yeah, I could play both of them at an elite level.
Well, you do a lot better in one than the other there, Vandy. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was 500 last
and
year,
we
baby.
know how you did in fantasy MLR, so we know which one's the good one.
It's a work in progress. But like you alluded to, Matt, got a busy episode in this one. Obviously got all those news and notes to break down, but also, hey, we're continuing our off-season fantasy 2023 ranking reveal, and this episode is all about the first 5/8s, the fly-halves, the kicking machines.
With all these signings, with all these signings that we're gonna go through, it's just more new guys that we're gonna miss rank at the start of next season.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, if you we obviously did not too bad on the scrum half ranking, as former nines obviously did all right there. But I was going through our predictions that we made at the start of the season for the fly half position. Matt, you and I may have taken a trip right back to where we were a couple of weeks ago with the other positions. But hey, you're gonna have to stay tuned to find out how we did there. And yeah, we'll go and reveal the top 5, break them all down, the best fly halves from the 2023 Fantasy MLR season. But before we get into it, like we say every single episode, if you aren't already, make sure you're giving us a follow at the Fantasy Ruckers. Social handles are up above if you're watching on the YouTube video, down below in the description if you're listening on the pod. Yeah, got some exciting stuff coming down the pipeline. You'll want to stay tuned there. Obviously, like we said at the top of the show, our goal here is to make fantasy MLR reality, baby. And we're working hard here this offseason to try to get that out to the masses. So you'll find out first there on our social pages. Even better, if you want to be even further in the know, join our Discord community. Obviously, bumping with Rugby World Cup talk, all things rugby, fantasy MLR, obviously, when that's going through with some of the with the roster moves that are going on. And yeah, we'll definitely be mentioning there when we do have a opportunity for more people to experience fantasy MLR. We also got a website, thefantasyruckers.com. You can go check that out. Got all the fantasy stats up there, all the stats from the past 2023 season. So if you're an MLR junkie and Rugby World Cup right now isn't enough for you, you can reminisce on the good old MLR days from 2023 by heading to thefantasyruckers.com. But all right, let's get it right into it, guys. Like we said, a busy episode. Got a lot of news and notes to break down. Before we get into the roster moves that we're alluding to, we might as well get this one out of the way because we got another rebrand coming down the pipeline here for the 2024 season. Obviously, we're going to find out who the LA team is going to be. There's going to be a branding change, obviously, there with Rugby Atlanta moving out west. We also obviously had new branding when it came to the Miami Sharks. And it looks like the Toronto Arrows are getting in on the rebranding as well. They released their new logo going forward for the Toronto Arrows. Interesting look, I should say. If you have seen it on socials, they're going back to the classic A. I believe this is the Arrows' third rebrand, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Because they had the original one that I actually really liked, their original logo way back in the early MLR days. Obviously switched to what they had been going for the past few years. And now they're switching it up again here. You can check it out on socials. Toronto Arrows RFC have it all over their social pages. Thoughts, guys? I mean, it's a simple look. They're taking a throwback to the wings of the Avro logo and some of the Canadian Air Force stuff in the past days. It's an interesting look.
Well, the Toronto Arrows got their inspiration from the Avro Arrow. That is the reason behind the name. And yeah, I got a chance, to go up to Ola on my way up to Killarney, Ontario, with one of the Arrows themselves, old Jack McRogers, and we drove right past the Avro Arrow. And at that moment, I said, "Wow, what a special place to be! What a special team, and what a special logo!" And I just knew there was a rebrand coming, and this is what came out of it. Look, the A, I think, is okay. Ryan, you alluded to it before the show. It kind of looks like Rugby Atlanta. It seems like they had this in their pocket. There's no Rugby Atlanta
anymore, so
well,
it's okay.
It seems like they had this in their pocket the whole time, just waiting for that Rugby Atlanta team to get shipped off. So they clearly knew something was coming. They had it in their pocket. They're ready to pull it out. I think the one that I actually like the most is the crest that has the
jet on it,
Avro Arrow on it that has the jet. So I don't think they're the Arrows RFC anymore. According to the crest, they're Arrows RC.
I don't know.
It's weird, but
with the jet on it,
that crest is kind of dope.
I don't know. With the jet on it, it's too American,
Excuse me, it's an Avro Arrow.
Your fighter jets.
You can't get more Canadian
fighter
than the Avro Arrow up in the boonies of Ontario.
Good.
Okay.
The Canadian Air Force is a respectable one back in its heyday. We got to pay homage to that. I will say, I do like the colors on this one. I
wonder if their jerseys change.
That's what I'm saying. Obviously they're embracing this baby blue, red, and kind of silver kind of look, throwing a little black in there as well.
Throw a little white, and then it's America. Boom.
It's a baby blue, all right, Van.
Buddy, the Avro Arrow protected Tilsonburg in the times of need.
Who protected Tilsonburg?
It's true.
They protected while he was probably in the Avro Arrow, while he was flying around protecting the city.
Well, we need it back.
The town, the village.
Yeah, not so much a city. But anyways, I think it's gonna be interesting to see where the Toronto Arrows go from here in terms of how they look. I like the colors. I agree with you, Matt. I like the logo. We'll see how it goes.
I hope they use the crest.
I hope they use
on
the
jerseys.
I hope
they don't use the
set. The new kit is going to be sweet. I could feel it.
Yes, I hope so. But the kit doesn't look as good when you get one win on the season. So
That's true.
let's
Do you
hope they
think-
can do more than that.
Do you think they keep rebranding? You know, like you break up with a girlfriend you didn't like you can't have a bad year in sports and you just delete everything.
It can go from past experience here in Major League Rugby. It can go of two ways. You can take the Rugby Atlanta approach in rebranding and to have absolutely a backlash in terms of changing it. I think here the Arrows did it pretty all right. I don't think it's too bad. So hey,
I
at
think
least
so too.
they're I guess what 2 for 2 now in terms of their rebranding changes. So maybe
That's
they
fair.
have it on lock here on how they approach things here. But yeah,
And I mean, the Rugby Atlanta rebrand led to them being relocated.
And it was
Arrows,
worse. You know, they downgraded.
I don't think it's going to lead to the same fate.
No.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple more wins. Look good, feel good, play good, right? So we'll see how
Ooh.
that plays out. But yeah,
Maybe not
interesting
play good.
stuff here for the Toronto Arrows. But let's shift on to some more fantasy relevant stuff that's going on. A whole bunch of roster moves happening over the course of the past week. Obviously, we can give a big thanks to James Dealey at JM Delay on Twitter, at MLR Stats on Instagram.
The
for
boy.
keeping us in the know with all this type of stuff. The first one that we got to break down, big trade happening here. We talked about Rugby Atlanta there with the rebrand. They're involved in a big time trade here this offseason in terms of Los Angeles now. Seawolves trading with the now Los Angeles team that is to be named, shipping out Jordan Chait to LA for scrum half Ryan Reese. And this is a very interesting one. So Jordan Chait, obviously, if you were following along here this fantasy MLR season in 2023, Jordan Chait making shockwaves. He was starting at that 10th position over AJ Alatimu. He played pretty well in that, and obviously there was a little bit back and forth and switching between the two there. But Jordan Chait, a respectable fly half here in MLR, going out west to Los Angeles, or I should say a little bit further south now from Seattle to Los Angeles in exchange for Ryan Reese. Ryan Reese, 43 caps with Rugby Atlanta, 21 starts, 4 tries over his time. Jordan Chait, 8 USNR caps in 2023, solid from the boot, 77 points in total with an over 87% success rate. I think this one's going to have big implications here. Obviously, Los Angeles looking to build their foundation here. And starting anew. And Ryan Reese moves over to Seattle Seawolves, which is an interesting one because obviously we know JP Smith is over there in Seattle, who we broke down last week as one of the best 9s in fantasy circles. But thoughts on this trade, guys?
Well, I actually, I like this for Seattle. I think they have a fairly good kind of roster in terms of 10. Like they got AJ Alatimu, they got the young guy they drafted last year. I forget his name. But I think where they're maybe lacking some depth is JP Smith. Ryan Reese is a starter for Rugby Atlanta, or was a starter for Rugby Atlanta. Him able to have him kind of come off the bench or even take some minutes away from JP Smith to kind of give him some rest might be a good thing. Fantasy wise, I don't know if we like that for JP Smith, but it is what it is. Chait, I think, gets a really nice start with the Guiltinis.
And we don't say that name anymore.
Voldemort.
I'm calling them that until they come up with a name. So that's them. All right, Gilchrist, you continue to live on with the Fantasy Ruckers. So I think Chait gets to have a nice start. I think he gets to solidify himself as a starting role, and he deserves to have that. Honestly, with the type of season that he had for majority of the year last year when he was out there.
And obviously, this is something that's gonna come up here when we break down the fly half rankings in just a moment's time here. But Rugby Atlanta, at least last year, was one of those teams that really didn't have that solid 10. They switched between Duncan Van Schalwick, I believe, and Kurt Coleman. So kind of flip-flopping back and forth, and there was no one that they really set their eyes on in terms of being that dependable 10. Kurt Coleman has been that in the past for them, but I think Jordan Chait, what he was able to show last season, I wouldn't be surprised, Matt, if he does hop in there and is able to kind of take a stranglehold of that starting position.
And we can start looking at him as one of the top, now that he has a starting role, and he may be a consistent starter, fantasy-wise, that's good for the depth at 10 in this league.
And again, I think that's going to be a theme that you're going to start to find out here as we start to break down these fly half rankings. Is availability is a key one here, and we'll explain why here in just a moment's time.
I think Seattle, honestly, just like stacking scrum halves though.
Yeah, and honestly,
would they have 5 last year?
But what's interesting though is that one of the big characteristics of JP Smith on why he finished as the best scrum half in 2023 when it comes to fantasy MLR was his availability on the pitch and him having those 10 80-minute plus matches played. I think there's a potential here that Ryan Reese is going to cut into that now,
Eh,
like you alluded to, Matt, which is going to have an impact from a fantasy realm. Something that that managers will have to keep in mind when they have JP Smith on their draft board for 2024.
Yeah, Vanny, good point. But I just think Ryan Reese is better than all the other
Yeah.
guys.
Well, I just seen a comment. It was like the Seawolves used for their scrum half and fly-halves, JP, Reed, Devereaux, Keane, Barry, and AJ all played scrum half, fly half. It's like, I think these boys just go in fat stacked in that position.
But yeah, should be an interesting one how that plays out. And Seawolves also making other moves here. A big time signing here. Super Rugby winger Tony Pulu, originally born in LA, but obviously going over to New Zealand, has represented the Chiefs, the Brumbies, Western Force, in Australia. This is a guy that's going to bring a whole lot of international talent here to Seawolves Rugby. It's going to be interesting here. Tony Pulu, a big time signing there out of them weighing for Seattle.
Man, this guy was like 2016, 2017, just like a staple part of that Chiefs lineup. It was exciting to watch him play, and I was excited to see him back then. And it's exciting to hear his name kind of come up, a name that I haven't heard in a long time. Let alone I didn't know that he was American, first of all.
Yeah, American born, baby.
But it'll be exciting to see him kind of come home, be in the MLR. I think he instantly makes an impact this year. But that Seattle Seawolves back three, I mean,
it's gonna be crazy.
That's a tough room. That's a pretty hefty room.
You think a 33-year-old winger still got it?
I mean, we're seeing AJ Alatimu do it at 10, and he's pretty old up there. And talking about
what do you got to be
AJ
faster
Alatimu,
for, 10 or a winger?
That's true.
That's true.
Fair enough. Hey,
we've seen the one big question I got. Like, he played the sevens. What's the big? Obviously, you know the difference between sevens and 15s, the amount of players in the field. But is there a big difference? Like, is there any growing pain, like going from sevens to 15s?
Yeah, I mean, so the biggest thing that I like that when you watch a really good international sevens player come over to play 15s, you know, the number of players that can excel at both is fairly slim. But the thing is, like, space. You have to understand how to work in a lot smaller spaces and be able to kind of excel and make the gaps in the smaller spaces, where in sevens a lot more room to run, a lot more space to be able to make something happen. Athletic ability is probably a little bit more it stands out a little bit more, whereas 15s you kind of, you know, you got to be patient with it. You got to kind of take your time with it, do with what you have.
Is it the same size pitch?
Yeah.
Everything's the same, just less.
So, like, athleticism means a hell of a lot more in sevens.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, as someone who's, and Matt, you can attest this too, because you've played a little bit of sevens yourself as well. As someone who's played both, maybe not particularly well, but believe me, I get more tired in that 14 minutes of a sevens match than I do in an 80-minute full 15s match. So it's definitely fitness.
Yeah,
Matt's talking about is definitely a thing. I will say though, I'll add though, we've seen it happen. I think one big key of it here before we move on here is, I think the level of talent, right, that you're bringing over from the level of play, even if you're playing sevens internationally or sevens, you know, at that level, coming to the MLR, that growing pain is not going to be as much. That natural talent that you have is going to make up for that, especially when you're moving to a league like the MLR that is less experienced, that is maybe a little less organized, and not as prestigious as let's say a 15s league overseas. And we've seen a lot of success. I mean, Kurt Baker just came overseas from being obviously a staple in the New Zealand sevens circle. He obviously is a leader over there with Old Glory DC. And hey, our friend of the show, Andrew Coe, not even a guy that played overseas, obviously representing Canada at the sevens level. He's made a great adjustment as one of the top wingers for the New York Ironworkers. So he's made that adjustment too. And I can't see why Tony Pulu wouldn't be able to do that as well. And he's shown that he's been able to do it as too. I mean, he's played for the Chiefs. He's played for the Brumbies. He played for Western Force. And like you said, Matt, his Chiefs days were a lot of fun. Now he gets to reconnect with his Bunnings NPC teammate on the Manukau, the county's Manukau, with AJ Alatimu, and see how he does there. But it should be fun. Another guy that will be added. I tried. Will be added to the draft boards here. So it should be interesting. Tony Pulu, welcome to the MLR. And the Seattle Seawolves keep on doing work, because now they announced the signing of Australian fly half Mac Mason. And that name might sound a little bit familiar because Mac
Oh,
Mason
what team was he on?
he was on the Gilgronis, a name that I am hesitant to bring
Hmm.
up. If you guys remember that, the Austin Gilgronis, all-time points leader for that franchise, scoring 187 points in 27 MLR caps between the years 2021 and 2022. So he returns to the MLR. Another interesting one. Obviously, they lose Jordan Chait. Bring in Mac Mason, still have AJ Alatimu. This Seattle Seawolves lineup is going to be an interesting one when it comes out, and just see how that starting lineup looks on a regular basis. It's going to be interesting, and it's going to have massive impacts here on the fantasy approach with the Seattle Seawolves going forward. Because obviously heading into 2023, which again we're going to get into, a lot of expectation with AJ Alatimu at the 10. Didn't necessarily start there all season long like he did in 2022. You add Mac Mason into the mix. It's going to be an interesting one here for the Seawolves.
And he said
You
it.
know,
Seattle loves their halfbacks.
that's right. You know what? After the first bit of news, it was like AJ Timu stock. And then all of a sudden that last bit, it's like,
Yeah. No kidding.
There
No
we
kidding.
go. And yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we got for. But, we did see Seattle dabble with the old, Chade at 10, Alatimu at 12
Yeah.
type combo. Maybe we see that more this year. Maybe that's what they're planning. Although it's kind of hard to leave Dan Creel out of the lineup with the type of player that he is. So we'll see how that kind of shows up and
Depth,
see
baby.
the impact on Alatimu that has. And even, is Alatimu or Mac Mason even worth the value that maybe we think that they are? Maybe they should be if they were alone. We're going to have to see.
Yeah. So Seattle Seawolves making moves here this offseason, accounting for basically all of our roster moves in this news and notes segment. But hey, it's not all of it though. We're shifting over to the Eastern Conference. Old Glory DC making some moves as well. They signed their all-time leading point scorer, the return of Jason Robertson, the Zimbabwe-born New Zealand fly half. He appeared in 19 games for the Old Glory DC between 2020 and 21. And for Old Glory DC, 175 points total. Again, this is another interesting one that's going to have a lot of impact because obviously they brought in Tito Diaz-Bonilla last season, who a lot of expectation, which you'll come to realize when we break down our top 5 rankings, reveal, and prediction segment. But now they bring in Jason Robertson, and of course with his pedigree, with what he's done for Old Glory DC already, it's hard to imagine that that Robertson is not the starting fly half for the Old Glory DC side come 2024. Obviously, Diaz Bonilla also having experience at the fullback position as well. But again, you add Kurt Baker into the mix. Old Glory DC, another one that's going to be a lineup to watch here, and that's going to have an impact in the fantasy world.
Well, yeah, and I was just reading the American Rugby News article, and they were kind of talking about maybe this means that Tito isn't coming back next year.
Maybe.
Because you look at the lineup, right? You're not going to have Jason Robertson, Tito Diaz-Bonilla, and Graydon Bowd. Graydon Bowd, who is actually, was a starter by the end of the season.
Yep.
So what happens there? I think out of Graydon Bowd and Tito's probably the most likely to not be coming back just because he probably has the ability to go overseas and go play wherever he wants. So I think it might mean Tito's out and Jason Robertson comes in as probably a pretty big fantasy pickup and one of the potentially top fly halves to repeat what he was doing not last year, but in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, should be interesting. So yeah, a whole bunch of what's interesting about this week's of news and notes is that it's not just roster moves that are typically happening. These are big time moves that are going to have a lot of impact here.
And it's
when
just
it comes
a start.
To 2024 fantasy.
I mean, this is just a start because the minute NPC Bunnings Cup or the minute the Super Rugby teams start making their selections from the NPC Bunnings Cup teams, we're gonna see those guys, the returning or the new guys, flooding into the league, and those are the guys that we've seen be top players in our league. So, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, should be very, very interesting to see. And then last piece of news that I want to mention: the Dallas Jackals entering the mix there when it comes to fly half signings, and they're bringing back Martin Elias to their squad. The Argentinian fly half scored 37 points in his 10 games, all starts in 2023. 61% success rate from the tee. He also, funny tidbit, crediting James Dealey, scored the first drop goal in Jackals history as well. From a fantasy perspective, pretty solid. I mean, nothing. He's not one of the top fly halves. Obviously, was kind of on and off. Had a big time red card early on that kind of hurt his rankings. But again, he was with the Dallas Jackals, still figuring stuff out. He was maybe a streamer that you could throw in there once in a while and hope for the best. But 61.4 total fantasy points on the season. Started in 10 matches, 4 try assists. We'll see whether or not he can kind of make that jump into being fantasy relevant as the Dallas Jackals slowly improve.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
So,
we'll see about him.
all right. Well, hey, let's start talking about some fly halves since it's been a fly half busy news and notes segment.
There's some big news coming out of other big news coming out of the Old Glory DC camp, though.
Yes,
we got to touch on it a little bit. I mean, Segra Field sucked.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, we'll touch on it quickly. I mean, they're moving to a brand new field. It'll be an interesting one. It looks like the players are hype about it. It's gonna be an interesting one. They're moving to the Maryland Soccer Complex.
Rugbyplex.
The problem is that I think the biggest thing when it came to Segra Field was the accessibility of fans being able to travel there. I don't think moving to Maryland is going to be necessarily.
I don't even understand
from that standpoint.
how that works.
But we'll see there. Apparently, it's a better fitting field for rugby. You got 3,200 seats plus general admission. Better size for the MLR. It's natural grass, so we'll see what happens in that standpoint. So we'll see how it looks.
Old Glory MD. Let's go.
Old Glory MD.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, now the news and notes segment is complete. Since it was so fly half heavy, why don't we stick with the fly halves here? And we talked about it earlier.
I like the trend.
This is all about the fly half rankings here. The top reveal of the best fly halves from the 2023 Fantasy MLR season. So why hesitate? Let's get right into it and let's reveal the top 5 here from the past year. And there's some interesting names on the list as we bring it up on your screen on the YouTube video. If you're listening on the podcast, I will list it out for you here now. The top 5 fly halves from the 2023 Fantasy MLR season was number 1, Joel Hodgson of your Vandy Utah Warriors with 187.7 points. You had him on your fantasy squad. You were quite happy. You mentioned at the start of the show, this is one position that you have gone pretty well at here in back-to-back seasons. Coming in at number 2, David Coates for the Houston SaberCats at 185.5 points. Had a great season there as well. Number 3, Jason Potros of the New England Free Jacks at 168.6 points. Number 4, Rodney Iona of the NOLA Gold, 140.3 points. And then Jason Emery coming in at number 5 with the New York Ironworkers, which is an interesting name, which we'll break down because obviously the expectation heading into this season that Emery was not going to be at fly half, but there he is on our top 5 list with 90.9 points. But guys, initial reaction here to the top 5 fly halves from the 2023 season.
Well, other than that, Ryan, we suck. Is that no surprise? I think the top 3 for us was like, I think we can all agree this is the top 3 that we would have expected as we watch the season fold out.
Yep.
It's clear that we see a drop off there between, top 2 really, but let's say the top 3. Let's throw Potros in there. Those top 3 were kind of in like a league of their own throughout the season, and then you kind of see the drop off after that. So I think it's just clear who the 3 best fly halves in the league were this season.
And this is what I alluded to earlier in the episode. Here, when Matt, you talk about this kind of drop off. For me, when you look at this top 5, there are 3 distinct tiers here. We've been talking about tiers throughout these rankings, and for me, at least in this top 5, there are 3 distinct tiers. Based on the points, you could probably guess what those tiers are. Joel Hodgson, David Coates in kind of the league of their own. Jason Potros is kind of that best of the rest type kind of ranking there, and we'll explain why. And then obviously the drop off continues. Rodney Iona, Jason Emery. But for me, it really was, and this is going to be something that's going to be talked throughout, is just the availability and the number of fly halves halves across the league that were consistently on the field and could be depended on a week in and week out basis. There were just not many of those guys, even on solid teams. You look at San Diego and the split time that they had over there with their Fly-Halves. Even on a solid team, you just didn't have that consistent guy that was able to stay on the pitch for you and rack up these points. But you'll notice on this top of the list that these guys were able to do it. So let's get into the guy who did it best this season, Joel Hodgson, the Utah Warriors. Like I said, 187.7 points. What he did this year was incredible. 4 tries, 762 meters gained. He started in all 15 matches that for the fantasy season. 13 of those 50, he played all 80 minutes, at 8 try assists, and then he was pretty solid from the boot. Most penalty kicks, I believe, out of all Fly-Halves, 15 penalties, 21 conversions. Joel Hodgson really did it all here from the Fly-Half position for a very, very happy Devin Vanderpool fantasy manager.
I was going to say, just keep going, man. Just keep going.
Yeah.
Didn't get you anywhere, did he, though?
Oh, my God.
But no, I mean, let's he had a slow start. The first, I think, 2 games we saw.
Yeah, he started out, got me like a 4.
Is Joel Hodgson going to be a guy that we thought he was going to be for Utah? And then you saw the games, he got more comfortable. The Utah offense got more comfortable. And you saw that it was clearly because as Joel Hodgson got more comfortable in that position, that facilitator role, he was just driving this offense forward. And we said it every week. Joel Hodgson was the reason that the Utah offense was what it was. And the reason, probably one of the reasons why Joe Mono was as good as he was this year, right? Why Mika Cruze was as good as he was this year, in addition to their athletic abilities. But yeah, Joel Hodgson, for me, the one thing that I think we should have saw from the start, and Vandy, the wizard, the absolute savant, clearly saw, is that, I mean, look at Utah's backup Fly-Half. It was like Colson Warner and Danny Gianniscoli.
Yeah, wait, we had a backup
Fly-Half? Exactly. I had to look up their names in our database to make sure that I had the right names because they never saw time. They never saw it. And Joel Hodgson was just a beast.
That's the thing about the Fly-Half position. After, like Ryan was explaining, after that teardrop of kind of Rodney Iona, that's it. Now you're going into kind of dual Fly-Half realm, like Jason Emery. Who was behind
but
him.
Even Davy Coates, right? Like Davy Coates still sitting at number 2, but like Robbie Povey was a formidable Fly-Half there. Mm-hmm. Like Jason Potros had Reese McDonald sitting there, and it's like Joel Hodgson was the only guy that we should have saw last year. Like they got nobody else.
Yeah.
And he is in a position.
Well, you look at like Emery, he had Sam Windsor, Jack Heighton, all take some Fly-Half, like
also true. Yeah.
Yeah. AJ Altimu, had Jordan Shea. After that kind of initial tier, it was just now you're in the realm of kind of 2 Fly-Halves, and it shows on the scoreboard for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's starting to become a common theme, especially on these positions that are so singular. You talk about the Fly-Half position and the scrum-half position, especially. I think it's just having the ability to stay on the field to rack up those fantasy points. And I think that has a lot of ability and foresight in terms of predicting how well these guys do. Joel Hodgson was obviously the benefactor of that. Guy had a high ceiling, consistently putting up double-digit points, had a high of 22.2 fantasy points in week 6 when he had 3 conversion kicks, 2 penalty kicks as well, and 2 try assists. He really just did it all. And again, like you said, Matt, he started to progress throughout the season and just got better and better. So Joel Hodgson obviously capitalizing that. But let's shift on over to number 2 now, David Coates. I mean, you could argue he had a pretty stellar season.
Probably a better year, just less games.
Right, and you could argue that he had a higher ceiling, that ability to score more points than what Joel Hodgson was able to do. But like you said, Matt, he just had the lurking of Robbie Povey. I believe Coates dealt with injury a couple of times throughout the season as well that put him out, but he was a guy that was able to do it a lot as well. I mean, 185.5 points in 2 less matches played than Joel Hodgson, 13 of 13 games that he started, 7 tries, has that scoring ability, 693 meters gained, 8 of those 13 matches he played 80 minutes, 4 try assists, and he was stellar from the boot as well. Not as many penalty kicking opportunities, which I think gave Joel Hodgson that advantage, 7 penalty kicks, but 33 conversions. He was absolutely money from the tee. And David Coates again right up in that tier 1. I would have been happy with either Joel Hodgson or David Coates this past season.
Yeah, you know what? I'm just a bigger fan of Joel. He's just got that dog in him.
No bias there at all.
And hey, if you look at the hit category, Joel Hodgson ain't scared to lay down the boom. Coates kind of shied away a little bit.
Well, the next guy we talk about, we know for sure shied away from tackles. But
Oh, yes.
to stay on Davy Coates, I mean, the difference with Davy Coates and why he probably was able to do this in less games was, Ryan, you said it, the try scoring ability, the ceiling that he had. I mean, every game that you put him in your lineup, you had the hope that he was going to be explosive, break the line, find his way to the try zone, and he always, he most of the time delivered and was putting up double-digit points more often than not. So
Yeah.
I think that's what you kind of like to see from him. That's what you got him for, and you loved when it would hit, when he hit that kind of high upside value, one of those high upside value games.
Yeah, and he had that stretch between round 6 through 11 where 26 points in round 6, 16, 13, 15, 20, 16. You know what I mean? Like just points that were winning you weeks. And having David Coates have that ability to get that was pretty stellar. Again, both guys doing it in different ways. But I think I'm happy with both of those at our top 2 in our kind of tier 1 fly-half ranking. And I think those are 2 guys that are going to kind of be on most people's watch when it comes to getting that top fly-half off the board. Then shifting over to number 3, Jason Potros. This is where at least in my opinion, I think we see a little bit of tier break. For me, Jason Potros is the same consistent value as Joel Hodgson and David Koser, but just doesn't have that same ceiling as them. He doesn't really have that ability to get those 20-point matches, which you can see in his point total, which he finished off with 168.6, essentially 20 points less than Joel Hodgson and David Koser. But 2 tries, 604 meters gained, was available. I mean, 14 out of 15 games he started in the season, 11 of those 80-minute plus matches. He was able to distribute the ball well like Joel Hodgson, 8 try assists, and he was money from the boot as well. 11 penalties, 44 conversions. But like you said, Matt, not that same tackling ability. And then obviously the try scoring ability as well. 2 tries there, less than half of what Joel Hodgson was able to get, and almost a quarter of what Davy Coates was able to get. But nonetheless, though, Potros, adequate performance this season. You were happy with him. But I think when you had him in your lineup, it was just that you were expecting consistent play, but you weren't necessarily expecting Potros to come out there and win you a week. Matt, you had him on your lineup. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, it's wild. I had Coates and Potros in my lineup. So
true.
Kind of jokes. Imagine if that guy won with that type of line.
oh wait.
I was but no, I mean you bring but you bring up the tackles. I mean, you're not getting him to get the tackle count. This guy had 49 tackles on the season. He hated tackling. He was allergic to tackling. Don't even need to talk about it. For me, the big thing with Potros was I think he benefited a lot in terms of his points. Like he got himself up to this tier because of the fact that he was on the Free Jacks. Like we look at the conversion kicks compared to, I mean, look at Joel Hodgson, number 1, right? 21 conversion kicks for Joel Hodgson compared to a 44 conversion kicks for Jason Potros. I mean, that is some guaranteed points every week, and probably one of the reasons why Potros had that high floor and that reassurance and that consistency.
Wait till Utah next year.
Versus a high ceiling. Yeah. Relax. You said that last year. But yeah, I think that plays a big part here in the high value of Potros. Stellar player, was consistent across, but it helps when you get, I mean, like 3 or 4 conversion kicks a game.
And you're happy with the value that you got him at, too. I mean, I forgot to mention, Joel Hodgson drafted in the 3rd round, 5th pick. Davy Coates, 3rd round, 2nd pick. Jason Potros, Matt, you stole him at the 8th round, the 1st pick of the 8th round. So he was definitely a huge return on investment there.
Some clown dropped Coates after he got hurt, so I picked him up, too. I also picked up Reese McDonald, though, because I didn't know which one was going to start. So.
Yeah, there you go. Just reassurance there. Because
Bat's got that dog in him.
Yeah, no kidding. This is the fantasy strategies that you need to be writing down here for the 2020.
He's cutthroat. I have a heart, man. I have a heart.
It's the champ. You got to take some notes down. Matthew was the one taking notes in the season before. Our first inaugural season winner, John told Matty to write down the sticky notes. He wrote down the sticky notes, and look at it.
You know what? I argue that point. I don't think Matt's even that articulate. I don't think he can read and write.
You know what? You might be right.
That's a different conversation to have on a different day. But yeah, I mean, Jason Potros, again, kind of in that tier 2, high floor, not that high ceiling. But he was able to get it done for you, and you were confident in him here. And this is where the drop-off starts to happen. And this is actually something that I was pretty surprised with, because I didn't think that the fly half position was going to drop off as much. We talk about our first season that we had, where kicking was such a huge part of our fantasy league, and just the amount of weight that was put on there, you had this expectation that there were going to be just a lot of points being had. But outside of these top guys, the drop off continues to happen. I guess a lot of the kicking starts to taper off there, but still, I mean, it's something that was interesting to see outside of the top three guys. But Rodney Iona was kind of close for the Nola Gold. I think, again, kind of links with how well the Nola Gold played. 140.3 fantasy points on the season, 2 tries, 659 meters gained, 12 of 12 games started. This is where we kind of get in there, where he only played 80 minutes in 6 of the matches that he started in. But 5 try assists was pretty all right from the boot as well. 9 penalties, 20 conversions. I think the big thing here, Maddie, and you may agree with me here, is that if Nola Gold is a better team, Rodney Iona probably sneaks up into that tier 2 circle with Jason Potros at the very least.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think we saw that when they had their run. I mean, I think it was like from week 4 to week 10, I want to say, where they had a nice little run there. And you see it through Rodney Iona's stats. Like he had a rough start. You know, he gets single-digit points to start the season, back-to-back weeks, and then he starts picking it up as Nola Gold is kind of ramping things up and getting some wins and packing on some dubs. He's starting to get some double-digit points. He was, you know, definitely true that he would be better on a better team, but I think he also had that, you know, that looming aspect also. You know, Reese Botha was behind him. He was also a young, formidable player. And for Rodney Iona, you kind of relied on a lot of upside from him. Like you didn't get that consistent floor.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of had to rely on some of those big matches, those big games from him.
And that's kind of indicative. I mean, he had the best fly half performance of the season for our 2023 fantasy MLR season, that 32.6 performance in round 4, where he racked up 117 meters gained, 2 tries, 8 tackles, 4 conversion kicks, 1 penalty kick. You don't see those types of numbers from the fly half position, but Rodney Iona was able to do that. So has that high ceiling.
And in our rankings, I think we were mentioning a lot of like the way that he played, or we saw that he played as we were heading into the season, was that he was an attacking fly half. Mm-hmm. And when he racked up the points, that's when he was consistently attacking and getting meters gained. And when he didn't, that's when we saw kind of the tough outings from him, and it would be a tough time to be a Rodney Iona owner.
Yeah, definitely an up and down kind of journey there through the 2023 fantasy season with Rodney Iona. And then this 5th one, let's wrap it up. This one's an interesting one. And I think this one is indicative and reflects just how quickly the fly half position drops off, and we start to see Vandy, like what you were mentioning, kind of those dual tandem fly half situations. Jason Emery taking advantage of injury riddled New York Ironworkers team. Obviously, Jack Hayden would probably be in this top 5 had he played a entire season, but obviously goes down with injury. Jason Emery is that replacement that comes in. He did adequate. I mean, the games that he played at the fly half position, he did well, finishing the season with 90.9 fantasy points, 5 tries. And I'd like to mention that 4 of those 5 tries were scored while he was at the fly half position. 557 meters gained, started in 11 of the 14 matches. Again, not all of those being at the fly half position. 4 80-minute plus matches, 4 try assists, and he kicked 3 penalties, 18 conversions.
You know what? I got a bone to pick. I had him as a center, drafted him as a center. Did nothing for me as a center.
That's true.
I drop him. He becomes a fly half a week later and just balls out.
Whatever, buddy. I had to deal the same with Nate Oxberger. He did nothing as a scrum half.
Yeah. You know what? Sometimes I just want to. If I could send a punch in the mail, like you could open up the thing. And...
You wish.
Yeah.
You wish,
I
buddy.
do wish.
Whatever. Is the 90.9, Ryan, just the points at fly half that he got?
No. That's the entirety of the
cumulative
season. Oh, wait.
No.
I need to correct that. Hold on.
That's just fly half.
That is just the hold on.
He got 137.
Okay. Let me correct myself. Yes, not 90.9. That is way lower. The drop off isn't as big. 137.
Okay, you just hate Jason Emery.
Well, no, that would be the drop off at a fly half. Like when he became a fly half.
Sure, but 137.5 points is what he got on the entire season, both at center position and the fly half position. But nonetheless, again, most of those points coming from that fly half spot. And he did well when he went.
I mean, 90 out of 137. That's quite a big portion. I mean, he basically just benefited from Jack Hayden being hurt.
Dude, it's just crazy how many points that position got at the between Jason Emery, Sam Windsor, and Jack Hyten.
Yeah, but
It's nuts, man.
it was. But to be fair, Sam Windsor also did slot in at 15 at times. Jack Hyden slotted
True.
in at 15 at times.
But he
I
started
think,
as a fly half.
yeah, and I think if Jack Hyden continued to stay healthy and didn't get that concussion,
True.
he would have been one of the top fly halves and kind of
I agree.
taken this space and reduce this kind of drop off that we see between Potros, Rodney Iona, and Jason Emery. But look, Jason Emery showed in the final last year that he could play fly half at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
He could kick conversions. He could be the guy for Rugby New York if they needed him to step up in that position. And he showed it this year when they had a stacked center combo, right? Like they had Fauci Fuatai, they had Tay Walden. They had the center position locked and they needed a guy that could step in there to cover their injuries. And he did exactly that. And he played well at fly half. I mean, like you said, Vandy, he did nothing.
He didn't play well at center. That's
and he came off the bench half the time when he was at center. But at fly half, I mean, 80 minutes, basically majority of the games, and he was balling.
Yeah. So, Jason Emery wraps up our top 5 there with, again, 137.5 fantasy points on the season. Pretty adequate stuff, obviously, like Matt said, taking advantage of the opportunity with injuries going on with the New York Ironworkers. But, yeah, it's an interesting point because, again, after these 5 guys, essentially, and obviously in Emery's case, it was a result of injury, you just see so many of these names that you were expecting to be high up there, but just either wasn't consistently on the field. You talk about Tito Diaz-Bonilla, who comes in at that fly half 7 position, and it's just like, hey, he just was struggling and didn't end up finishing the job. Got that stolen by Graydon Bowder. Then you look at AJ Alatimu, who was kind of mixing in with Jordan Chait. You look at it for San Diego, both Will Hooley and Josh Henderson. It's just once you're out of this top 5 here, where it was kind of dependable fly halves that you're counting on, and even in Rodney Iona's case, wasn't really necessarily all season long, but at least from Joel Hodgson, Davey Coates, and Jason Potros, after that, there just wasn't that same go-to fly half guy that you were going to every single week. From that standpoint.
But we've said this for every position, but I think everything changes when you look at these tiers are blown up and these gaps are blown up. You see the drop off much lower once we have the storyline where AJ Alatimu is a consistent starter for Seattle Seawolves. He jumps up into the top 5 for sure. We just talked about Jack Hyden. Jack Hyden doesn't get hurt. He jumps up in that top 5, and he is one of those top 5 guys within the league. And we see that top 5 race a lot closer than what we see it now. But that's a lot of what ifs.
Yeah, I was gonna say
things that
you can't neglect it. I mean, yeah, you have guys, but this is how the 2023 season broke out.
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
It's just something that you have to keep in mind for the 2024 year. Is that I think we're starting to learn. Especially, I think the scrum half position and the fly half position, particularly with these kind of singular ones, at least in the fantasy world. Because with front row, right, there's a whole bunch of different front row guys that you can go with. Second row, a whole bunch of second row guys. There's multiple of those positions on the field. So you're not taking away opportunity when you're putting different players there. But when it comes for scrum half, there's only one scrum half on the field. Fly half here, there's only one fly half on the field. So you are taking opportunity when there are other guys in the mix, and that is a direct reflection to fantasy production. And I think that's going to be heavily weighed here in 2024.
And add to that is that scrum halves and fly halves are all expected to play at least 70 minutes. You start, you play at least 70. So if you're not getting the start that day, if you're back up, for example, Will Hooley and Josh Henderson, which we saw switch all the time, you didn't really see Will Hooley or Josh Henderson switch at half. It wasn't like they split the time.
Sure.
If Josh Henderson was starting, he was taking it to the 60th, 70th minute. If Will Hooley was starting, he was doing the same. So it wasn't like you were able to still get production from the other guy in a given game like you could at other positions.
You know what? It just seems like the fly half to relate it to football a little bit is like the running back position. You have some big top dogs that would, eat all the carries in this sense, eat all the time. And then you just have, what's called community running backs, community kind of fly halves. You have your handful of guys that are going to play every game, play 60 to 80 minutes. And then you just have community ones where it's like, okay, he's a little banged up. We're going to put the other guy in for 60 and you can come in at the end.
Yeah. No question about that. Now, before we get to our favorite part of the show, when we start to look back and reflect on our preseason,
this is my favorite part of the show.
Preseason predictions. I do have one question before we kind of move on here, and Matt, you kind of alluded to earlier in our discussion, is how much of the fly half production, if let's say all things are equal in terms of, we know that, let's say the same guy, let's say Joel Hodgson, Davy Coates, we know that this guy is going to be starting the match. We know that he's going to have a lot of opportunity on the field, and it's not a difference between split time and having less opportunity. But how much of it is it now related to how good of a team that they are playing for? You talk about the conversions, you talk about the penalties, you talk about Jason Potros' case, being on the Free Jacks, giving him the opportunity to get 44 conversions. How much are we weighing in on that? Let's say there's a guy that has, a whole bunch of opportunity, but is on a team like the Dallas Jackals versus, a guy that is on a high scoring offense. Is it so heavily tied with that? Is it so simple to say that you're just looking for fly halves that have opportunity on good teams?
Well, I mean, look at the Shane O'Learys, the Sam Malcolms, the Martin Eliases. There's a reason why they're not even close to the top 15, right? And Chris Mattina is probably up there with Chicago and at 6, really because he had a lot of time at 15. I think it plays a lot into it. I think, look, 10 is one of those positions is that you're not going to get that high upside or that high try scoring possibility or those meters gained ability unless you get go forward ball, unless you're on the front foot. And the only way that you can be on the front foot is if you are pushing a team backwards and you are a good team with a good offense, able to have a good defense as well and dominate the game territory wise, as well as just strategically wise and pattern wise. So it plays a huge part. I think fly half probably more than most positions, scrum half as well. These two positions are probably two that really rely on needing to be on a good team in order to have the most chance for success or the most chance for kind of that big boom games.
Absolutely. And again, kind of going back to your point, Matt, about kind of the split kind of, having those multifaceted guys like you talk about San Diego, and you talk about, having both, Will Hooley and Josh Henderson there. There's streaming options, right? It's not so cut black and white. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you go in there and, if you see a guy that's starting, you might not have a guy that's going to be able to do it, Joel Hodgson every single week, and it's just a lock and start line. Maybe the fly half position is something that you kind of look at where you have a handcuff. You know what I mean? You have to play with two guys when they're starting positions. When you see a guy starting and know that he's going to get that opportunity, that's something to consider as well. But all right, let's shift on. Let's shift on to our favorite part of the episode.
I don't want to do this.
Vandy's favorite part of the episode.
That's right.
Bring up our top 2023 fantasy MLR fly half predictions. And
That's silly.
Matt, we're right back to square one when it comes to these predictions. As you can see on your screen, if you're watching on the YouTube video, for the people on the podcast, I'll reveal my predictions and then go down Matt's list. Pretty similar here, but for me, got AJ Alatimu at number 1, Luke Carty at number 2, Davy Coates at 3, Sam Malcolm at 4, and Rodney Iona at 5, and respectively, AJ Alatimu finished at the fly half 8. Carty as the fly half 9, Davy Coates as the fly half 2. So got some correct picks there. Sam Malcolm at fly half 17, and then Rodney Iona at fly half 4. And then we go over, Matt, to your predictions. AJ Alatimu at 1, Davy Coates at 2, Sam Malcolm at 3, and you had Tito Diaz-Bonilla in there instead of in my pick of Luke Carty, and then Rodney Iona at number 5. I mean, kind of okay. I mean, 2 for 5, which is all right. But again,
failing grade.
What I'm getting at here most is just there was a lot of situation that we didn't see for playing out that happened that really affected the point total of this.
We were naive, Ryan. I think
sure
we're naive with one pick. Sam Malcolm. We should have guessed that the whole Arrows team was going to be in the hospital room. We should have known. And Sam Malcolm couldn't evade that. There was no way. He got away with it the year before. There was no way that this year he was going to be able to evade that. And we should have saw that coming. And that's on us, Ryan. That's on us.
Yeah, no kidding. But all right, let's kind of break it down and talk about why these guys didn't appear in the top 5 as we had so predicted. I think our first one, both of us having AJ Alatimu at 1, who again finished off as the fly half 8. Pretty straightforward here. We did not know of the coming of Jordan Chait, and we saw
came
with
from
AJ.
Tel Aviv Heat. What were we supposed to say?
Exactly.
They don't broadcast those games.
And what AJ Alatimu was able to do in the 2022 fantasy season was just unquestionable. He was essentially the Joel Hodgson. He was the guy that was always on the field. He was successful with the kicks, was on a successful team, and he racked up the points.
He was better than Joel Hodgson.
And
I hate to say
distribution
it,
as well. It was just incredible that season I had in 2022, and it was hard to not put him at that number one spot.
From what I can see, he has less points. Huh. So I guess he's not
This year,
better.
Vandy, you know what I'm saying. But it was hard not to pick him in that first spot for both of us, Ryan. It would have been ridiculous for us to not choose him here.
Yeah.
And now we know next year that never pick the guy who was top spot last year.
Unless his name's Joel Hodgson.
I don't know about that, buddy.
Yeah, I swear that's happened every single ranking that we've done.
Yeah, pretty
basically.
much.
Number 2, I think you were spot on here, Matt. Davey Coetzer was solid. I had him at number 3, so hit on there. But for me, I'll take this one on the chin. I had high expectation for the Chicago Hounds. I got fooled. They bamboozled me. It was smoke screens. Weren't as good as we thought they were gonna be. And Luke Carty finishes off as the Fly-Half 9 when I had him at number 2. Just not a great season for Luke Carty. Not a great season for the Hounds as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do when Hounds look like a bunch of Chicago churros? You know what I mean?
All right, and then shifting over to who you had number 3, Matt, Sam Malcolm. I had him at number 4. Finished off Fly-Half 17. Again, I think this is another circumstance. I know you kiddingly say that we were naive that the whole Arrows team, but hey, who would have thought that Sam Malcolm would have taken a season-ending injury? He was so stellar for the Arrows in the season before. But again, you can't predict injury. Again, maybe even if he was in, though, I have a hard time thinking that maybe he probably wouldn't have been in the top 5 anyways because of just how bad the Arrows were.
True.
So I don't think you can necessarily just let us off the hook completely. But hey, there was injury that was that played a part here in Sam Malcolm not finishing, or at least having a chance to finish here in the top 5.
Yeah, I mean, he was out half the year. What are we gonna do? Like, we had to put him here. He was a kicking machine, conversion, penalties. He did everything. You know, I think if Sam Malcolm's still in there, maybe they have a better season than what they did.
But now, hey, we talk about opportunity. Robbie Povey is in the house now with the Toronto Arrows. So again,
it's going to be a tough decision.
Going to be a tough decision there. Number 4, Matt, you had Tito Diaz-Bonilla in there. A tough one. I mean, he looked good at times, but then just fell off the map and just wasn't the Fly-Half we thought he was going to be here in the MLR and for the Old Glory DC. And they understood that too, shifting over to Graydon Bowd, through the season.
Yeah, he had a great start, and it was like started off as us just kind of being like, this guy's the guy. He came in. We know that what he's going to do. We saw that from, the fact that it was such a high marquee signing. We had high expectations for him. And then by week 8, he kind of just fell off the map. And, it is what it is. I had to go with one of them. I had to go with either Potros, Tito, or Rodney. Decided to go with Tito and Rodney. Should have trusted, the Taranaki boy, Jason Potros. But, yeah, what can you do?
And then, all right, rounding out our predictions, number 5, Rodney Iona finished off as the Fly-Half 4.
Boom.
So adequate, got it done. He showed off.
How could we ever have guessed Jason Emery? There was no way.
That's true. No way.
Vandy. Maybe Vandy, since he's such a savant, would have guessed Jason Emery, but we wouldn't guess it.
Yeah,
there was no way.
It was a tough one. But again, to Vandy's point, yeah. I mean, in
he's
hindsight,
Utah. He would have definitely been in my top 5. He's Utah.
Okay, well, we'll see this year, bud.
I would have made a mockery of him and yeah, Joe Hodgson's gonna be number 1. And then when I have been I told you.
But if we do the math correctly, I know Vandy alludes to both me and Matt having a failing grade here, but nonetheless, we still got to keep point totals. I am obviously.
I don't like the way we're keeping points. I should win this one.
Ryan's still in the lead. 1. What? Were you 1-0-1? No, we're 1-0-3 now.
No, 1-0-4 now. Matthew is 0-1-4, I believe.
I feel like I should win this one. I got Coetzer.
Tied at front row, tied at
you're
second
1-0-4.
row, tied at back row, and I took the scrum at point.
That's right.
Hey, Matt, I mentioned to you
and
at the start.
And you put Cardi at 2. It's kind of ridiculous.
I mentioned to you at the
start. It's kind of ridiculous. In fact, you should lose points for putting Cardi at 2.
I swear.
We're gonna lose points for putting Sam Malcolm.
And you put Hanko Gramicius in the back row. I should get points for that.
Matt, I am on the record.
Pretty sure you're gonna put what's his name, that other Chicago Hounds center in your center top 5. He's definitely not gonna be in the top 5.
I am on the record at saying when we were deciding the rules for this.
Show me the
this
receipts.
game. I have the receipts. I have them.
We
when
weren't
I was saying
recording.
this, I was saying that we should do the difference of the ranking. And if I remember you said math is too hard. I just want to do the people who are in the top 5. And that's what we're doing.
Ryan.
And you're losing at your own game.
He can't read and write, man. You don't got to go
I'm
into
one-
him like that.
I'm 1-0-4, baby. So take it
I
on
can't
the
do the
chin,
2
man. I'm
R's. I
Matt,
can't do the 2 R's,
Ryan,
Ryan. I can't read and write.
Right, he's already dead, man. Come on, stop beating him.
I
leading.
can't
What
do
can
the
I
2
say?
R's.
What can I say? But the goal here is to keep Matt winless here for this entire prediction segment.
I'd really like that. I would enjoy that.
You got to at least keep him
Gross.
humble after all the talk that he's been doing
Gross.
after winning the past fantasy season. But
Gross.
nonetheless, I guess to put a bow on it, outside the fact that our poor predictions continue. Hey, we're learning a lot from this fly half position, right? And I think going forward in the 2024 season, there's going to be a lot more heavily weight on the opportunity, a lot more heavy weight on the team that you're picking the fly half of, and just understanding situation, because that situation can have a big impact. And we talked about it earlier in the show to kind of bring it full circle about how much is changing at the fly half position ahead of the 2024 season. This early in the off season, there's going to be a whole bunch of different names that are going to be in this top 5. Probably won't predict it right, but it's definitely going to be definitely a different look here heading into 2024.
And hey, look, I think what we also learned is that we got to take in more what ifs, but also put some what ifs out the window. We gotta take and give some of these what ifs and understand what ifs. We don't need to know what's up. We gotta know what ifs. We gotta if.
Are you following him, Vandy? I
No,
don't
no,
understand what
Sometimes when Matt talks, I honestly just tune out.
Some-
Oh, here he
you
goes
know,
again.
Yeah, we gotta consider everything, but not all the things, right?
Okay. Just
Sorry, break
just
that one down for
poetry.
me. Wait, break that one down for me.
I don't think we have time to break that one down. I don't know
No,
how
we
this
can't.
guy's mind works.
Vandy. We can't. We gotta consider everything, but not all the things.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
It's
there.
everywhere and all the places at the same time.
Matt is the Tito Ortiz of freaking podcasters, man.
Philosopher Maticus. He has all the friggin' all the great quotes that people should probably not take to heart and use as a tip moving forward. But hey, you're talking to the fantasy champion. I really can't say much from the fantasy prediction side of things. Maybe not so much. How you came out with the championship this year, Matt, have no idea. It was basically
I tricked you guys all.
I blacked it out. I'm like a goldfish, man. I have no recollection.
Yeah, I would too.
All right, well,
season.
I guess that's a great place to end it. Next week, we're going to be breaking down the centers, and that's going to be a fun one. Again, kind of similar to the back row position of the forward pack. These are the point producers, and we're going to have a lot of fun breaking that down. And these are the guys that were heavily reliant in your fantasy lineup to produce you some points. So that's going to be here coming up in episode 81 next week as we continue our 2023 top fantasy player ranking from the past season. All right, guys. Well, for Matt Yee, for Devin Vandy Vanderpool, I'm Ryan Yee, and this is the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
Go Guiltinis.
You've been listening to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, covering everything rugby from the MLR and beyond. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and be sure to tell all your friends. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, connect with us on social media at the Fantasy Ruckers. Till next time, this is the Fantasy Ruckers Show, signing off.